Hello again. Just want to do a sort of quick follow up on my review of, hang on, The Long March, okay, which you can download, available from all good computers. I didn't mention it yesterday in the review that I did of the book, but the forward is by somebody called John O'Sullivan, and I just wanted to sort of like say a few words about this because I think it's really indicative of exactly where we are with our modern Conservative Party. And John O'Sullivan is was one of the speechwriters of Margaret Thatcher. He was an MP for a while. He now works for some right wing think tank in Viktor Orban's Hungary, and he's very keen on having very close ties between right wing groups in Hungary and right wing groups in Poland and the UK. And it's worthwhile just having a spare of minute or two just looking at those particular governments because they do sort of seem quite right wing. Anyway, in his forward, it's indicative, I think, of an awful lot about modern conservatism, especially in the UK, but across Western Europe. I'm just going to quote a few bits and have a bit of a commentary on it. Okay, so first of all, he talks about mandatory sex education in schools. Good grief. Yes, he does. I'm going to quote from the book, okay? I might describe that guidance as the Section 28 of the woke revolution. But that would be to make light of the matter. Section 28 prohibited local authorities from promoting attitudes favourable to homosexuality. This guidance is a great deal more authoritarian. It proposes to repress or even eradicate dissenting attitude on sex and gender from education, irrespective of whether those attitudes are Christian, Muslim, or informed by an overwhelming evidence of the physical and social sciences that gender stereotypes reflect real biological differences and that the traditional family ensures better outcomes for those children raised in it than do alternative family structures. The social sciences don't agree with that, mate. The sciences don't agree with that, right? Let's pick this stuff apart. For those of you that don't know, Section 28 was legislation that was brought in by Margaret Thatcher. Basically, it was just simply a homophobic response. So people like me as a teacher, people working in education, couldn't discuss, promote issues around those kind of issues around sexuality with our pupils. It effectively stopped that dead. Not one prosecution. It was simply authoritarian to stop the discussion dead. And sex education is not mandatory in UK schools because if you're religious, you can opt out. Okay, simple thing, right? Why is a religious belief of more value than a political one? Why? Why does it hold weight? I don't agree with you because I'm a fascist. Why doesn't that hold weight in the same way as, I don't agree with you because I'm Christian? Apparently it doesn't. I just don't get that. They're both lifestyle choices. On the most ultimate level, you can always just simply decide not to be religious, okay? It's not a cultural thing. Realistically, it's not. Yeah? In this country, legally, you can opt out of sex education. The government's going to bring in relationships education. Good idea. Notions of consent, all that sort of stuff, yeah? Yeah. Okay. And lastly, that very old-fashioned one that, all traditional families just, you look at it statistically as people are more likely to succeed. Yeah, it's a class issue. They're more likely to be middle class. It's a class issue. But we can't talk about class because we're a member of the Conservative Party. We don't do that. Okay, he links that to Gregory Lukács, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who's a Hungarian communist who's widely attributed with bringing in some of the first sex education in the world. This is where the anti-Semitism come in because it's used by the right as this concept of the left wanting to destroy the family. But actually, if you look at the facts, which obviously John O'Sullivan hasn't because why bother with that? The guy brought in what would be regarded these days as just very, very bog standard sex education. Why did he do that? Why did he do that at the first part of the 20th century? Well, because he didn't want Catholic nuns teaching kids about sex, because the majority education was formed by the Catholic Church. Would you prefer your kids to be taught sex education by a communist or a Catholic nun? Think about that one. Answers on a postcard. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, just sort of moving on. He regards all of this stuff as, and I'm going to quote again, it's a violation of almost everything Toryism is supposed to be about: liberty, cultural and religious tradition, tolerance, prudence, and good practical government. Okay. Just a brief word on Boris Johnson's government. Good practical government, tolerance, prudence, liberty. Yeah, we could spend all day unpacking those. Not going to, mind you. Okay, he also brings in the standard sort of cultural Marxist thing about Adorno and Horkheimer. He alleges that Adorno and Horkheimer didn't ever criticise anything other than the West. It's not true. Again, it's not true. Look it up, Mr. O'Sullivan. Maybe you should read something by them as opposed to simply listening to other right-wingers. Maybe not. He also, towards the end, he decries the replacement of professional standards by political values. He says, in particular, in journalists, some journalists, he also says this, some journalists now argue that an anti-Trump bias should be a professional obligation for those covering politics. Some. What, 3? Where? Some. Yeah. I know some people believe in a flat earth. I know some people believe in trolls. It's not something that's necessarily gonna happen, though, is it? And let's think about the actual debasement of political discourse in the media. Where has this mainly come from? Fox News. Yeah. I'm sure there were plenty of people on Fox News who believe, or at least some people in Fox News, who earnestly believe in the Great Replacement Theory, a bit like John O'Sullivan. Yeah? But it's okay. That's okay, because that's the truth, isn't it? It's pravda. Yeah. And lastly, he calls for Conservatives and Liberals to unite against the far left. And those of us that are actually on the left say, yeah, they already have. Think about the coalition government, 2010, and austerity. Whenever I meet a Liberal Democrat, I just think that they're a Tory who are interested in cycle lanes and trees. That's it. By all means, you must keep the left out. It's all about power. Anyway, just thought I'd just throw that in as a little addendum. Just an idea. Yeah, take care.